What is going on, guys? Joey here, and this is a podcast that I did last week with his name is Colton. He runs a programming podcast, and I felt like one, I'm going out of town this week, and two, I thought it was a good piece of content to have up on the channel. So I figured, why not just toss it up for you guys? Um, so it could be here, so a place that you could come back and reference it. I go over some programming stuff, some of my experiences working with some of my lifters, and I think that I thought it was a good one. So tossing that up this week, heading out to Cayman Islands, and don't know if I'll have time to put up a regular informative video, but just wanted to give you guys a little intro before we got right into this, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Powerlifters Programming Podcast. As you can see, we got Joey FLEXX on the podcast today. So thanks to Joey for coming on. But
No
with that
problem.
said, let's just get right into it. So with this
It's good.
podcast, we want to talk about Jesus quite a bit. But before we do that, do you want to just talk a little bit about general differences in programming a super heavyweight or just someone as strong as Jesus, maybe like frequency, volume, that sort of thing?
Sure. So the biggest thing when it comes to super heavyweights is one, you're going to be working with a lot more calories than with everybody else. So that is, you can use that to kind of play to your advantage, knowing that, especially peaking for competition, you're more often than not, literally almost every single time, you're going to be significantly stronger on the platform than you are in the gym. You do not have the variable of having to suppress your body weight or keep your weight down, and you can pretty much always grow into meets. We haven't always done that because we've had other goals and we've had certain meets where we could chill out, but that is something that you need to take into consideration. So you're never really going to have a situation unless you're deciding to do like some sort of an active recomp nutrition wise, where you have to really take a hit to that recovery from the nutrition side. The next thing is if you're dealing with like really, really big weights, you just have to understand that there's going to be a higher demand on the joints and the tendons and the ligaments for recovery. Now, if the individual is like tall with skinny joints, that's going to be different than somebody who is tall with big joints, right? The size of your joint may also mean that you're a more durable. It's a more durable joint, so it may or may not be a factor. But with Jesus, I definitely have him on lower frequency when it comes to the lower body lifts. It used to be upper body as well, and we recently changed that. Then I would, for example, like Alba, for example. I mean, she's deadlifting 3 times a week. She's squatting 3 times a week. She's benching like 4 or 5 times a week, and there's absolutely no reason to put Jesus on that frequency. I mean, you can make it work. I believe it or not, you could go light enough to where it worked, but at that point, I just feel like you would be the sessions that have to signal growth. Those are going to be pretty demanding sessions, and if you're going to respect that session and the cost of that session, you you're probably going to be doing more harm than good, or there's just a higher chance of causing a problem if you're adding in more smaller workouts to maintain some sort of stimulation. So long story short, with the bigger guy that's really strong, you could probably do a lot less. Jesus is like, obviously, we're IPF 100% natty, all that stuff. But if it's almost, Jesus is kind of like an enhanced lifter in that the effect from his super demanding workout is gonna last like almost an entire week. And people that are like, if you're on like testosterone or something, like high doses or whatever, that's gonna also last kind of like super long as well. So even more so than with Jesus. But yeah, that's kind of the difference between working with the big strong guy versus a smaller lifter, smaller joints, less damage per rep, you could say.
That makes sense. So Perk might be trying out the 6 times a week SVD,
Yep.
but probably not Jesus. Probably not Jesus.
No, I believe that there's many different ways to get to where you want to go, and you can do it doing a lot of frequency. You could do it doing less. There there's benefits to doing it one way or the other, but I think that people just kind of look at what people are doing that are successful and they try that thing. And I mean, like I said, you could make, as long as you follow like certain things, everything could work out to some extent.
Yeah, that makes sense. I highly agree with that. With in terms of just like needing to do a little bit less, I think a lot of the times that comes from just, there's like overlap between a low bar squat for a really big guy. Getting into that position's tough on the elbows. And so then
Yep.
your bench and your elbows hurt, your shoulders or whatever.
Yep.
Do you find it's beneficial, like managing that fatigue? Is it more beneficial, like setting up the split in a certain way or getting more volume from accessories, or how do you go about that?
No, absolutely. I think when I teach my programming workshops, the first thing that I kind of start with before a little pre-split stuff is the split, because the split is going to set up the distance between the competition lifts. So if you're, squatting heavy on a Monday, I'm not going to have you squat heavy on a Wednesday, right? I'm going to try to spread that out as much as I can so that I can have a productive uh heavy squat day for working on 7 days for convenience. I want to try to keep it on the same day, which means that the distance of that heavy squat day is going to be the farthest possible, time in your split that you would do it, which would land on the same day. And you kind of also, we need to practice the deadlift too. So we want to space that accordingly. And if there's more overlap, then you have to think about how you're going to set up your split. So for example, if there's a lot of overlap between a sumo deadlifter and their low bar squat, then you probably only need to hit lower twice a week, and you could just do it like on a Monday and a Friday, right? Or a Monday and a Thursday or something like that. If there's a ton of overlap, not everybody's gonna have that amount of overlap. If your range of motion on sumo is like so minimal, then you can start to get creative with where you put it and get a lot of practice in with that lift, because it's not super demanding from just breaking down muscles, right? You're just stressing the joints a lot more, which tend to be a little bit more durable. Um, but yes, and then also like if you pull conventional, that's going to have its own demands on its own. I say the conventional deadlift is the most demanding lift that we probably do in powerlifting, and then I would say the high bar squat probably comes next. You can make arguments for other lifts, but conventional definitely, you have to be very mindful of like where you're putting your conventional. Is there going to be interference with your competition squat? And are you using the conventional to complement other lifts because it is such a great builder, or are you using conventional because it is your primary, and you're going to have super demanding primary days, so you want to kind of orient things around being able to give to that, that primary conventional day. So yeah, setting up your split, interference between the lifts is important. I mean, me personally, I moved my primary bench before my primary squat because my primary squat was just destroying my elbows. I couldn't do anything. Like I would get to the primary bench day the next day and I'm just like, why am I here? I can't do anything. My elbows are in so much pain. And it was like that for quite a while. And then I flipped it and it got a little better. So yeah, that's definitely something to consider.
Yeah, it's funny how like a split sounds so basic, but it can really make or break the program. Like,
So the split is, there's like a lot of different things that go into a split that on the surface people just think it's a split. Like I literally try to make training so simple and to where people are just focusing on the things that matter. But if they don't understand it, it kind of goes over their head of how like, not, I don't want to say genius, but how smart and intelligent that setup actually is because of what it's doing for them. I try not to over explain things, but I try to put people in a position where people can go their whole careers, especially like some of my girls that don't even want to know. They can go their whole careers and they don't even understand like certain things about the training because it just never comes up, and we just don't really. Sometimes I'll explain it to them if it's like relevant to what we're doing. Like for example, I have this one girl who travels a lot for work, so like once a month her split, everything gets like moved forward or back a day. So I've explained to her why the split is set up the way that it is, especially tapering for competition. I like to keep the days on specific days because if they're not, then you have some wiggle room, but you want things to be like super consistent. So like, if if you're planning for a Saturday competition, but you have to do all your taper work like on a Wednesday and you're not able to train Monday and Tuesday, you have to be a little creative on how you do that if you planned on originally taking things a little bit earlier. So yeah, that's pretty much that.
Yes. Speaking of, how do you, that goes into our next question perfectly. How do you go about that? It's very common. Currently, people are like, okay, I have an SBD day on the competition Saturday. You're going to be strong your week 4. You don't need a taper. Just train in. You know you're going to be strong on that Saturday. But
Yeah.
I know a lot of year lifters, I couldn't tell you the exact days, but like they might have a primary on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on different lifts. And then still like magic, you peak people
Yeah.
incredibly well, like
Thank you.
as well, if not better than other coaches.
Thank you.
And I just don't get how you align it so perfectly. Is that
Yeah.
just like trial and error? Is there like some crazy math involved, or how do you go about this?
So the overarching theme when it comes to tapering someone, and I believe I put this in a video like a million years ago, maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. I'm not sure. I know I've definitely talked about it in my classes, but when it comes to tapering, people used to really hyper fixate on if the competition is on a Saturday, then I want my I want my like strong day to be like on a Saturday, and I want to kind of line everything up with that Saturday, being as successful as possible as I can during training, right? And there are pros and cons to that. But for me, it's almost like if I'm tapering somebody down, you have like I like to think of it like a half life on each lift. Uh, Deadlift, conventional deadlift is going to have the longest like time that it can be away from, I would say, um, let's just call it the meat of your work. The meat of your work is the work that is what got you in shape. It is what made you strong in the first place. That's why if you think way back to how they used to program, where they would do like a hypertrophy block and a strength block and then an intensity block. The problem with that setup is if you're just doing triples only for a month, the stuff that actually got you like super strong, you're so far removed from that it's not going to carry over all the way into your competition. And coming up in powerlifting with enhanced lifters, I used to see this all the time. Of course, there were successful lifters as well, but I saw like, meet didn't go as planned, meet didn't go as planned, meet didn't go as planned, just because this training style was so antiquated and the, enhanced lifting was like the main thing, like, I want to say like 12, 13, 14 years ago, something like that. But coming into meet day, if the meet is on a Saturday, I mean, I have people, if you're, for worlds, it's like kind of annoying when people compete on like a Tuesday and then I have someone competing on a Wednesday and someone competing like a Thursday. Something I did for Keiko coming into his Giga meet at Nationals was as we were tapering, we were communicating each day, and I would make an adjustment based on how much fatigue he had, and that's all it is. To summarize what your question, the answer is like you're just calibrating based on proximity of the bulk of your work to where the day is. Now you have to understand like how much fatigue your lifter is going to be holding at certain parts of the block. If you don't know that, you don't know how much of each lift to pull off, and you could like screw up the timing. And there have been times like through just like that this lifter didn't think it was a significant thing and they were really busy, and like communication just like wasn't there, where um, you know, I didn't hear from them, or I was like traveling, or I was like overseas, and they thought it was okay to just like jam a bunch of stuff together, like really close to the meet, or they overshoot like their deadlift like super hard, like maybe 7 days out or 6 days out. And that was not originally what we had planned. And I have seen times where they'll still show up and they'll still be like, within, I want to say like 1 to 2% of where you want them to be, but they're just like, I just have a feel. I don't know how to describe it. It's like I have a feel for like I could look at a lifter. I kid you not, I could like look at a lifter when they're cutting weight, like on meet day. And if it's like Russ or somebody that I know really well, like Keiko, I'll look at their body and I'll know like what kind of day it's gonna be just based on my prior experience with them. And like all, they're sending me videos. I'm constantly looking at their lifts. I'm constantly seeing how they're moving, and I can kind of have a gut feeling that just kind of tells me, okay, we're probably going to have to let's lay off the gas a little bit on squat, because instead of deadlift just like showing up and being super strong, I need to take some off the squat in the meet so the deadlift could kind of compensate for that mistake that happened in the taper. This didn't happen with them, but I'm just saying in that one lifter's example, it's like little calibrations and little tweaks like that. But yes, if you just think of it like I need to be ready on Saturday, but most of my guys, the primary squats are going to happen earlier in the week. They're going to happen like a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, something like that. Maybe Sunday, like somewhere in there. So if they're having their primary squat there, we need to be super strong on a Saturday. As long as you're trickling down fatigue, you know, like 10 to 14 days. I just throw like random stuff out there. For girls, it could be closer. It could be like a little bit closer than that. Like I would say about 3 days variance. Somewhere between like 21 and 10 days out, somewhere there, depending on the individual. As long as you start pulling things down, you can sort of time it up, understanding the half-life, right, that we talked about. If conventional has I could give Jesus like 9 days off, 10 or 9 days off, and it's like not that big a deal. I might have him take one super easy workout in between, and it's not a problem. But if it's like a sumo deadlifter that's very technical, I want them to practice that lift because it's not going to be super demanding on their taper. So I will have them do it like up to like 72 hours out. I also like to go by hours and not so much days, because if you're going by hours and you're in another time zone, or if you're, something happens, like you could always have that sort of frame of reference. But a simple way to do it is, yes, do it. I'm gonna be honest. I literally don't know what other people are doing. I just hear it from you, and like, from if I see somebody else talking about it, I have no idea what other people are doing. I've just been sort of refining my own stuff for a long time, and I understand programming very well, so I can look. I've seen other training blocks and I've seen other things, and some of my coaches have like brought resources to me and say, hey, what do you think about this? So I understand the theme behind why people want to build into things and make the week for be however it is. But I've always had a lot of success sort of doing the work ahead of time, making sure that I'm strong enough, and then and then you can sometimes get extra credit, sort of bringing that fatigue down as you come into the meet, and then you're going to have a brief period where you're going to be super strong, and that's where you want your meet day to be. You can do it the other way where you build up, and I have little glimpses of that happening, sometimes in training when I have lifters build up. For example, Russ is competing soon and we're kind of building up. It is going to cut off probably next week or the week after, where we are going to have a big down. Like it's going to be like up, then we're going to have to dip down, and then we're going to compete. But for Sheffield, I did not take that approach. We already did all the work that we needed to do, like 8 weeks. It was like 10 weeks out, something like that. And I was like, okay, we're done. We're as strong as we need to be for Sheffield. Let's get some extra credit. I call it the meat grinder. Let's put your body in a state of like it's almost like your body's like, I am not strong enough to withstand what is happening right now, and I'm gonna grow. I'm gonna grow, but we're not gonna display that, and we're not gonna see that until it's time. And that, if I have the time to do that with the lifter, it's super strong. So yeah, I know that was a lot. I know I talk a lot, but I hopefully I answered your question like 3 times.
No, you definitely answered it. That was actually a way cooler answer than I was expecting. That was super in depth and very very interesting. So it sounds like there's a ton of lifter feedback and just you being experienced. You can tell what they even look like. Yes. What feedback are you looking for if you're week out and you're watching their videos or you're just listening to them? If you're thinking we need to maybe pull back more or keep it the same or maybe push more, what are those going to look like?
Okay, so in terms of calibrating to that degree, one, the lifter has to have like really good communication and their nutrition. It's almost like I think about, like, if you think of like the solar system, you have the sun in the middle. The sun is spinning and you have all the planets everything is kind of got their own thing going on. They're all these different moving pieces spinning while the big piece in the middle is sort of spinning. And that's kind of how I see it. You have nutrition is doing something and you're timing that nutrition up with a big weight cut that they might have to do. So I know, okay, once we get into like that gut cut mode and we're messing with water and sodium and things like that, performance is going to be all over the place. So I want to get a lot of my work done before that if I can. And I don't want to be evaluating my lifter when that process, sort of begins. There are some things you can look at, but it's not going to be the same as like, normal, everything's fine in training and we don't have to do none of that stuff. So paying attention to nutrition, paying attention to, usually if it's a big international competition, about a week out, they're traveling. They're dealing with, time zones. They're dealing with all kinds of different things. So an example, the answer to your question is like kind of specific to what's happening, but an example of this can be once we show up in whatever country we're in or whatever we're doing, what I'm looking for is, okay, what are we looking like after that travel? Did we take care of ourselves? Are they going to be sharp? Are they going to be on point? Or are they going to be like super rusty? I can think of examples where, you know, a lifter gets there a week before or 10 days before that first workout, like kind of shit, right? Like it's just, you know, you had to deal with all this stuff coming in. You know, maybe you got into your room late, maybe there's a flight delay, whatever. First lift's kind of okay. They get some rest, they get hydrated, things are a little bit better. Now that they're on a good time zone, they go to the next workout, and then now they're starting to come to life, and I go, okay, we're on track. That was short term, sort of transient levels of interference that I don't really need to worry about. And as we get closer to the competition, they're starting to come to life more. They're starting to get back on track and get back on that roadmap that I had to lead them into competition. So it's really just how much fatigue they're holding is probably one of the main things, and then what kind of stress are they under coming in. If I just had to, you know, make it, you know, just give you like a simpler answer, and then you know, it really does come from experience because I've done this so many times to where I know what I used to like way back, like 2013, 2014. I used to be like hesitant over trying to like break the mold or do certain things that um, you know, I've never done before, but I had a theory that it could work. One example of this is, uh, you know, my girl Tina, she did bench worlds, and I had a feeling that it would kind of be okay for her to take a heavy bench the day before, just because of how training was, and it worked out. She ended up hitting like 2 point, like I had her goal like bench number, and she ended up exceeding that, and we hit, you know, basically a second attempt the night before, and that was something that I don't really want to have to do again because it was a very specific set of circumstances. Also, in bench only, you're not squatting before, right? So that's something that you need to people have to think about. But it ended up working out, and I, you know, I always say there are rules. There are certain rules and parameters that you should operate under, but also you could be creative and kind of bend those as long as you're um, you know, it's like if you have a rubber band, you kind of bend it to the side a little bit. It's still one rubber band. It's still made out of rubber. You're just kind of pulling it over here for a second. You know, you're not snapping that rubber band. You don't want to pull it so far out to where now you've broken it. You know, pulled it off its foundation. You're not keeping up with the theme of what the point of the taper was. I rarely will add more, but I don't even know the name of it. If I don't think Eric Helms is gonna see this, but I don't even know if it was him, but I just know he's one of the boys. So there was a study a while ago, way back, that I don't even remember how I saw it or what it was. This was literally like 10 years ago. It might have been like, yeah, over 10 years ago, where they had athletes come into workouts, and it wasn't even powerlifting. It was like just generic, like football player or something, right? And they would do some tests, and based on how they felt, so like based on the RPE that they took, right, based on the single that they took, right, just to make it powerlifting terms, you would take a weight, and if that was RPE 9, 8, or 7, or 6, or whatever, that would dictate what you're doing the rest of the workout. That is something that stuck with me over all these years, and I really try to take from that and say, how could I apply this? Everything that I do is just taking like raw stuff that like kind of is related to like humans and like how they react to certain stress, and how can I adjust that for what we are doing. Because there's actually a lot of, I mean, even it's a completely different sport, but even in like UFC, there's certain things where like they have like heavy days and they have light days. Their heavy day might be a lot of sparring and a lot of like other stuff, and a light day might be, you know, lifting weights, because our sport is like the easy sport for the easy thing for other sports. But yeah, you get what I'm saying. So that always stuck with me, and I always thought, you know, that calibration, that being able to adjust the workout based on how they're feeling, and I will do this with lifters, and I'll just give them some options, and they're like, oh, he's just giving me some options, but that, you know, I'm not explaining to them why this is the best way to go about it. My favorite way to taper is always being like super crazy hands-on like that, and if I can like build a relationship with that lifter and be I mean, you can't predict this, right? Like some people you're gonna click with like really, really well, and some people it's like very professional. They just pay you, like you do your job, and they give you what you need, and that's it. But the lifters that like Crandon, for example, is like really, really, really good about like she'll just text me, and if she's in the gym and she needs something, she'll literally just call me. Like, what do I do? Like, what am I supposed to do? You put see me on the sheet. You didn't answer me. What am I doing? So she will be really assertive about that, and I like that because that allows me to make sure that everything that we're doing, I'm able to sort of calibrate it in that manner. Yeah, another big answer. Sorry about that.
No, that's great. You're just dropping so many keys. The people are going to love it. The more you talk, the better, really.
Thank you, thank you.
You talked about it a little bit ago, just about Russ, and sorry if you hear my puppies in
No
the
worries, no
background.
worries.
We're fostering some puppies right now, and I'll mute
Very
myself
nice,
while I'm
very
talking.
nice.
But basically, you're talking to Russ or about Russ, and I remember in one of his YouTube videos, you touched on a little bit. You were saying like this block is going to go crazy. What kind of goes into that block? Like what's different about it? How do other blocks lead up to it? Was that kind of like a taper in training, or what was going on there?
If you're referring to recently or before Sheffield?
Recently, it was whenever he hit like the 355 squat.
Yeah, so Russ, I've been working with Russ for like May 2017. So that's a long time, right? It's over 8 years. I know him really, really, really well. And with that, I I just put some targets in there for him where I would like to end up. And I think with Russ, because he is able to prepare, he could calibrate his variables to the demands of training. Um, he's looking at those bigger numbers on the, and he's just adjusting things to try to get those things to come out. And what is so surprising about it's not surprising because I'm not surprised anymore, but it is impressive because I don't know if everybody could do this. Definitely everybody can't do this. He is able to usually I'll have people take the end of the week a little easier so we could hit the numbers I actually want to hit at the top of the week. He had a big end of the week, which this is pretty characteristic of him when he's in the heavier weight class. Like, so when he's heavier, he could have like 705 triple at the end of the week, and then come in 2 days later and take a 750, which usually if he does all his sets like super hard on the prayer squat day, that 750 is probably not going to happen, which is fine. And I always tell him this is the range that you want to be in, and if you can't, just tell me, and then we adjust, right? But basically, it was probably just a combination of how heavy the work was in proximity to what we're doing, but I'm also taking advantage of him being heavier. So he's looking at that saying, I'm going to have some output that I've not had since like 2022. And even then, I'm stronger now, right? So he's looking at that and he's saying, taking everything into account, taking everything, it's very interesting. This competition, it wasn't like super planned. It was something that I think we decided to do it like kind of right after I got back from Worlds or something like that. And so he was already doing a block that was going to like kind of get him back in shape and like build him up. And it just worked out timing wise. And I was able to take the work and the meat grinder work that we did, right? The hard like sets of 8 and the things that we're doing. And I'm able to sort of transition that into like similar amounts of volume, but just like heavier loads. And he's just looking at that and he's going, oh, okay, Joey wants me to hit these big numbers. All right, let me lock in because, I've never seen him write those numbers on the paper before. But, and I'm not always perfect with what those numbers are going to be, but it's like based on everything, I think that this could happen. And then, we'll kind of like map it out. We haven't had enough time to sit at 93, running enough training blocks where I could actually like be as precise. Whereas if he's 83, I kind of know where things are going to be at, and he's going to exceed those numbers on meet day, and he's not really going to do it sort of in the gym. So I think he just kind of looked at what I mapped out the numbers wise, and he saw that, oh, okay, Joey's got some big plans for me. In addition, I think it tells him that I believe in him, and I know these numbers can be intimidating, or I mean, I'm not gonna lie. When I'm thinking about my last competition, when I have 340 on the bar, I'm thinking about what could happen to me if I screw this up, right? It's a scary weight, but that makes you're gonna, like, if you have it in you, you're gonna rise to that occasion, and you're gonna do the things that you need to do to make it happen. So that's really all that it is. And I'm being just a little more specific with what I want him to prepare his body and mind for. That's all.
I feel like there's a theme going on that's client or athlete coach relationship is super make or break at the very highest level for sure.
Yes, I think that. I mean, when I think about everybody, like every world champion that I've coached, or even lifter that I've coached to the podium at Worlds or anything, um, even like for some juniors, they got to trust me a lot, because we're going into scary situations. Everybody wants. I watched a show the other day, and they said that everything, like the goal that you want, there is literally another person on earth. There's literally another person that is working just as hard, if not harder than you. Like, you got to tell yourself that they're working harder than me, right? To take that goal from you. They want to do that too. So if you have that in mind, it's like an intimidating thing, and it can cause uh, angst. It can cause fear. It can cause uncertainty if a lifter's never done that. I have seen this. If you take me, and bro, I'm like so calm at meets, like I'm kind of like chilling and having fun. If you take my how I am, and it's either gonna rub off on the lifter, and they're gonna kind of be like, well, Joey's chilling, so like, why am I worried, right? Or if it's like a super baby junior, I might put them into like a really stressful situation, and they do not have the facilities and experience to handle that situation, and they might overthink their technique and, like, miss on like a technicality, or walk forward on squat when before the just like a stupid little thing, right? Granted, that can happen to anyone, um, if the situation calls for it. And I think stress management and being able to build it's all just trust, right? With trust comes confidence. With trust comes, faith in what you're doing. That's why, I mean, I believe that, everybody, whether you're like religious or not, to have some kind of a faith in something, whether it's your process, your coach. If you look at like the way Ray Lewis used to talk about, like, I am destined for this, and I'm protected by God. When he says that, I believe that he believes that. Whether you believe in it or not, he believes that, and that is very powerful, because it switches your mind into, I can't lose, because something out there got me. If my lifter says, bro, this number, I know Joey would not call this number if I couldn't hit it. I have full faith in him. I got this. My lifter Laura, who competed, she said it beautifully in her post meet, um like, kind of like recap. She said, like, to summarize my relationship with Joey, it's literally blind faith. And it's like, and I truly, and I'm so thankful to be in a position where, when lifters have that faith, it I respect that, and I'm like, okay, I need to cherish this, and I need to make sure that I can put them in the best position possible. And to see her blow up her third squat, which squat has always been a pain point. Squat was always something that, like, she was kind of down about, or like, oh, like, I know my squat's my weakest lift. She absolutely destroyed her third. That's just, it's amazing to hit it in a competition, and it shows, like, not only are you improving at the thing that was bringing you so much stress, but you have more to give. And that doesn't come if you have doubt in what you're doing, if you have doubt in the program, or whatever, you're not going to be able to get there. And Russ said it in the Sheffield prep. For those that watched, he said, like, I know that what Joey's giving me, like, this is like rocket fuel, and I'm going to do everything that I can to hit this as best that I can. When I saw him say that, it gave me, like, his perspective and his side of, like, wow, that's just kind of exactly what you just said. That sort of coach lifter relationship and that buy-in. And if they can have that, I mean, it is like an intangible tangible. It is, you can't like hold it, but it creates like real results. And it's like one of the it's also one of the most fulfilling things I think about, the coaching in general.
Yeah, man, that's super cool. And that's like the coolest thing. People come to you, they want progress. You actually like they have some blind faith in you. They're like, I think this guy knows what he's doing, but like I feel like crap right now. Hopefully this works out. They go hit some sick PRs.
Yep.
She didn't quite win Worlds, but I think her time is coming. Maybe
She's
next year.
right there. She was right
Close.
there.
She's close. Yeah, that's super cool and fulfilling. I accidentally took us to like a massive tangent away from Jesus, but I do have
No worries.
1 to 2 questions about Jesus before we wrap up. So basically, leading into Worlds, you guys were really pushing. I think you went from 2 to 3 times a week on bench. You were doing a lot of heavy singles, also with some really hard back offs on squat, and then the deadlift. He was going like 400 kilos like every week it seemed, plus some big PR rep back offs. And it looked like he was about to have just like the meet of the century, his biggest meet ever. And unfortunately, like adductor thing a week out, but I'm sure it'll come together at Sheffield or whatnot. But basically, my question is, how much of training do you think is like really pushing hard to force progress like that versus letting progress kind of come to you?
Good question. I'll speak on his situation first. It was just super ridiculously hot in there, and for a super heavyweight, that if you're 400 something pounds and you are already a person who perspires quite a bit, with Keiko, it was like getting hot in there, and we were able to like do a water modification to like cancel out what we thought he needed to do to, we had a sauna a little longer, let's drink a little more to like kind of cancel that out, right? With Jesus, we don't know what that is, because I don't know how much a 400-pound man is losing in that hot of a room. Like I'm telling you, I wasn't even lifting and I was clammy, right? I was like, what? I was like, why am I wet right now? Why am I moist? So it was very hard for us to calibrate that as he was going through the meet. And like there was like weird stuff, right? Like the rack height was too high, so when he walks out that big weight, the bar's like bending, so he's like he's like hitting the rack as he's trying to walk out, which is causing like him to like second guess things. Like, and then now his adductor, like you mentioned, he's thinking about his adductor, so he's like, sorry about that. Tina's doing stuff on the side. He's thinking about his adductor. He's worried about like shit. Like, I mean, I remember we sat down. I was in that hallway and he was so sweaty, and we were just thinking. I'm telling him, you have this weight, for sure. You can do this weight. We're thinking about like everything we have to lose if that adductor is the thing. And I thought about Mikey when he heard his adductor like years ago, and I'm like, I think you can do it. If you're feeling something right now, if you got that like hot, that sort of like hot sort of feeling, bro, it's not even worth it. I'm gonna save him for another day. I'm not even gonna worth it. Let's get this dub. Let's get out of here. I said we could put it on deadlift, and then of course going into a hot environment with deadlift, it's gonna be very difficult to fix that. But we created like a plan B or like a code red for if we get to the meet and I go out there and I'm like, yo, this bar is slippery and it is hot as shit in here. We're throwing the plan out the window and we're just taking like conservative measures, and we'll try to do the best that we can to fight the environment. But with a bigger guy like that lifting with that much weight, it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. You know what I mean? And he probably could have did like 1100 something, which is like not that far off from his all-time best. But there's just no point if like I'm not going to risk him. His like he is an athlete as a job. He has way too much to lose to push through something like that when there's nothing on the line. So that's what happened on that day. And then forcing progress is a great question, because I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. I actually think that you should operate in a place of like growth signal safely, not getting into that red zone. You actually don't need to get into that red zone. And I think when you go into that red zone, you like the body can only synthesize protein like so fast, right? So as long as you're in that state, as long as you're, optimizing as much as you can to create an environment for growth, you may not be displaying your best numbers during that time, and you may be running up fatigue like a decent amount. That's okay, but I truly believe that um, you don't need to go that far anymore. You just need to signal. You just need to put the body in a state of moving forward. And I would say if the lifter is sort of thinking, I want to work harder to try to get more, I would say the best way to think about that is I want to do enough to put my body in a state of growth. And that once you hit that, doing more is not helping you. It's actually quite a detriment and can create a debt that you're going to have to pay back through the form of extra recovery measures. So you just want to like kind of flip the switch to green, and once the switch is flipped to green, you're good. Just operate in that zone, and then after a couple of days it's going to flip back to red, and then you just need to kind of get there. I don't necessarily think I'm trying to think of an example. Like training hard and operating like a little bit on that red zone is fine. Um, but you do run the risk of like certain injuries. Now, if I have a lifter that's like super durable and they're willing to try it, like for example, Alba used to have like this groin thing, and then once that got fixed and it was like enough time went by, we're like, okay, let's try the third day. It's going to be super conservative, and she's able to do it. And I actually think she's more durable now after having waited to heal that and then bring that in a way where it's sort of, you have to like kind of massage the body into getting what you want. You can't like force it to do it. If I could sum it up. Um, so, but there's other things too. Like a lot of it is just like the feel of it. Like I don't know how to describe it, but it's like, I mean, I told very recently, I told one of my newer girls, I told her that primary was very, very easy. It was very, very easy. And I know it's just week 2, which is fine. We can add some more sauce on there next week. But I don't want to see a week 4 like that. Unless it's like I'm telling you ahead of time. You know what I mean? I want you to have generated a level of difficulty. What I really look for is if you have like a set of 5 or set of 4. I don't know why I like 4 for some reason. You look at the first rep and then you look at the 4th rep. There should be a good difference between the two. If they're all the same, you could probably add weight. If you're trying to create that signal, if you're deloading, it's fine. You're under sort of that threshold because you want to create growth, and you should already have created that demand on your week before, your month before, stuff like that. So yeah, I don't think you need to overdo it for more progress. I think you could do it in the form of like locking in more variables and sort of getting inches that way, but you don't have to. I mean, I do it. I do. I'm trying to put this in like number terms. If 9 to 10 is like high injury chance, like 9 to 10 is like not even. It's not even more progress. It's literally just you're just risking getting hurt. I think that sweet spot is going to be somewhere between like a 8 to 6. If you're staying in that zone of sort of difficulty when it comes to training, then you need to also be mindful that an 8 might also be injury territory for certain people. So that's where things get tricky. If you need to kind of push them on that scale and their injury, like they're very prone to injury, then maybe you need to kind of pull it back, operate in a lower zone of not just worrying about straight powerlifting progress, and more so worrying about, let me build up the individual, let me build up their skeleton and make them a more durable, capable lifter. And then once we've done all that, then we can sort of transition to that next phase where we're actually working for mostly strength and not so much sort of preventative type things.
Dude, I think this was a super good podcast. I think you
Thank you.
dropped like so many keys. People are gonna absolutely love this. You give
Thank
me
you.
a lot to give like little like sound bites on Instagram that I've been doing. I
Thank
got
you.
I got a lot of notes of like go back to 30 minutes and crop this part out. So yeah,
Appreciate it.
I really appreciate you coming on, dude. Do you want to tell people where they can find you on any social or coaching, just anything?
Yeah, so for coaching, flextrainsystems.com, or you could just jflexfit@gmail.com, or you just DM me at joeyflex7 on Instagram with 2 X's. Yeah, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. I also have a YouTube channel. It's under Joseph Franzo. And yes, thank you so much. And I'm glad it was helpful. And I hope that people were able to sort of, I don't put my personality out there too much. So hopefully at the very least I was able to sort of give you some of that.
Yeah, I checked how many podcasts you've done, and besides King of the Lifts, Sean's podcast, and like Jurin's, I didn't see many. So I'm honored
Yeah.
that you came on. My
Yeah.
the foster dogs say goodbye too. They're
Yep. Thank you. I think what you're doing is quite noble for the doggies. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I'll just, if you guys need anything, let me know.
all right. Catch you later, man.
Yep. Thanks.